Family, friends, faculty, and graduates, it is my privilege to welcome you on this beautiful Chicago afternoon to Class Day, a celebration of the class of 2023. My name is Amani Mryan, and I'll be graduating tomorrow with honors in economics and a minor in data science. Thank you. For the last 2 years, I have served as a member of the Maroon Key Society. And as such, it is my honor to kick off graduation weekend by explaining what Class Day is. Class Day is a tradition that celebrates us, the class of 2023. It celebrates all of our experiences and learning that have taken place on this campus and all over the world these past few years. Today's program will include reflections from student speakers, award presentations, and a keynote address. I'd like to start the celebration by introducing our 3 student speakers. First, we'll have Jeremy Huang. Jeremy is a BA MA student from Belmead, New Jersey, who studied economics and psychology. He competed for the Maroons as a long jumper on the track and field team and was named as this year's Mary Jean Mulvaney Scholar Athlete. Around campus, Jeremy has served as a leader for the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship and was the president of the Chicago Economics Forum. Next to speak will be Daphne de Beistegui. Daphne, a fundamentals, issues, and texts major, grew up in London, where she made her debut as an actor in the last Harry Potter film. At UChicago, she has performed in 2 Shakespeare's plays with the Dean's Men, 4 dance showcases, and 2 Where Fun Comes to Dance competitions with Rhythmic Bodies in Motion's Performance Company. She also worked as an assistant editor to The Point magazine and co-founded GeoMask, a small business distributing biocompostable, 98% filtration-efficient respirators around the world. And finally, we'll hear from Ricky Holder. Originally from San Bernardino, California, Ricky majored in public policy studies. Having been raised in the California foster care system, he is passionate about child welfare reform. As a veteran of the US Navy, Ricky was part of the first ever cohort of UChicago's Veteran Scholars Program. His 4 years of involvement at the Institute of Politics culminated in him serving as the 2022-23 co-chair of the IOP's Student Advisory Board. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker to the stage, Jeremy Huang.
Hi, everyone. So I recently went online and I read something interesting. It said that the Regenstein Library is considered one of Chicago's ugliest buildings. I dug a little bit deeper, and people on Reddit went a step further. They called it an unforgivable, ugly waste of space. But the thing is, after 4 years at UChicago, I'm convinced that they've gotten it wrong. In fact, if we look a little bit closer, the Reg may even be a monument to be celebrated. To get this point across, let me tell you about 3 UChicago alumni. Alumnus 1 is Jay Berwanger, the #1 NFL draft pick and Heisman winner ever. Alumnus 2 is Indiana Jones. For the little ones, this guy ran from a really, really big rock, saved the world, and became an American film icon. And last and probably least, Alumnus 3 in 24 hours is me. A 5'9", a 6-foot kid from New Jersey who is still now trying to figure it all out. The thing is, at this school in particular, there are so many times where I look at all of you, 1,700 brilliant students, and I see the next Jay Berwanger or Indiana Jones. In fact, it's easy for me to think, I know why all of you guys are here, but I'm pretty sure the admissions committee made a mistake. There was another Jeremy Huang who actually is 6 feet tall. But you see, it's feelings like this that really show the beauty of the Reg. In this 5-story concrete box, the UChicago experience is shared indiscriminately. We have chess grandmasters, we have Olympians, we have a 7% chance one of you guys will win a Nobel Prize. But the thing is, I promise you that when your Hume essay was due at midnight, I saw you start it at 8 p.m. at the Reg. You see, we owe gratitude to the Reg because it's the catalyst that has taken every single one of us and transformed great students into stellar people. It's through the fires of our midnight coffee breaks, that our study groups were forged into our friendships. It's through this treadmill of never, ever ending assignments that our academic interests became our lifelong passions. And it's through those A-level shenanigans that our college labors became our cherished core memories. If it hasn't become clear, I'm not just talking about the reg. The last 4 years at UChicago have been the ultimate formative period, and this is through the highs and the lows, because it's easy to reflect fondly on the highlights. Getting a yes on that first date, thanks Ellison, getting an A somehow on that test, or that sweet, sweet feeling of finally landing a job after weeks of being a social hermit. But the thing is, for people like you and me, who know what it really means to be a student at UChicago, it's actually conquering the lows that really teach us our life lessons. As someone who has experienced many lows, I can tell you several life lessons. The first is that even when companies don't care enough to send a rejection email, we, one, build grit, but two, we learn that no email means I never officially got rejected from the job. Number two, even when Canvas sends a notification that we scored in the very bottom quartile of the class, we learn to dig deep, to trust the process, and to stay curious above all. And lastly, even when we lost just a bit too much sleep over the last 4 years, we learned that we now have lifelong friends to stay up with. University of Chicago's class of 2023, congratulations to you on 4 transformative years. I hope that when you look at what you've experienced, and more importantly, what you have accomplished, you carry genuine pride and you reflect with gratitude. Now, as ambassadors for this school, know that even if you are just a 5'9" kid from New Jersey, you're poised to be the next Jay Berwanger or Indiana Jones yourself. I leave you with one final note, and that's the next time someone confuses UChicago with UIC, you tell them, I didn't go there. They don't have the reg. Congratulations, thank you.
So this is UChicago, which means that many of you, like me, were probably convinced when you got here that your entire personality rested on how well you could understand Foucault and quantum mechanics. Well, that and your house. I, for one, believed that if I just read enough books, I would one day reach a state of enlightenment, eudaimonia, if you will, and finally be content with the person I had become, ready to leave college and face the world, equipped with an armor of knowledge. I have some bad news. I feel just as ignorant, if not more, than I did when I first stepped foot on this campus. It was only through my reading Foucault and stumbling through quantum p-sets that I realized just how much more there was to learning than I'd thought. It turns out that whether we like it or not, life cannot be worked out in theory. The only way out is through. The worlds of books are always coextensive with our own world, to which we must eventually always return. To make matters worse, our world is just that, ours. It's up to us to make it one we want to live in. As a fundamentals faculty member once told us in the annual Power of Books talk, people are more important than books. Excuse me. People are more important than books. Books are nothing without people to read them well, to keep them alive. Who we are, the way we are, is all that can be accounted for. Life, history, resides in us, begins with us. History, in other words, it does not lie somewhere in the distant past, in what is least recognizable to us, but in what is most familiar to us. Other people ultimately establish our horizon of possible ways to be. They open us up and shut us down, show us what's valuable and what it means to love. Just as important as the written words we read for class were the words we spoke to and about each other. Free speech is too often construed to mean say it all. But as the word counts on our essays have taught us, the opportunity to really say something is precious. Do not think that because you are not Bill Gates or Toni Morrison, that you are excused from making a difference. You will make a difference, whether you like it or not. What you do get to decide is the kind of difference you make. Achievements and accolades can recognize our worthiness, but people, mutual relationships, are the ultimate arbiters of our existence. Winning, after all, means nothing without friends cheering us on. I said that history is what is most familiar to us. Similarly, a UChicago education is not like an expedition to exotic lands. Rather, it is a journey into the details of what was right under our noses all along. It simply asks us to pay attention to what's already there, to the world in which we are immersed, for we see only what we pay attention to. During a discussion with my Hume TA about one of my papers, she teased something out of me that I hadn't realized was the basis of my argument because it seemed self-evident. I'll never forget what she told me. Always write down what appears obvious to you. Those are the most important things. In a world where big data reigns supreme, and it seems that the entire range of human knowledge is instantly accessible, it's easy to forget that people are behind it all, and easier still to lose sight of what's worth holding on to. When everything is laid out before us on the same indifferent plane, it can seem that nothing matters at all. Our proud motto is about knowledge enriching human life. I do not take this to mean that we should seek knowledge undiscerningly and to no end. As one of my heroes and resident dean, Larry McInerney, used to say, knowledge is not in the service of progress, nor is it absolute. I think it is rather a matter of care, a matter of tending to the world, one's own as much as the capital W world, with great attentiveness. Pay attention, for there is so much to be attended to. Thank you.
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to be said, folks, we did it. We just spent the 4 long years scaling the academic equivalent of Mount Everest, and we should be so finally proud of ourselves for reaching its peak. And it's important to really emphasize how proud we should be. We should be proud of all of our hard work, of all of our accomplishments, and of the education that we just earned through our sweat, and if you're like me during finals week, our tears as well. But this pride, I believe, must be accompanied by a recognition that we've all been so tremendously fortunate. We've been fortunate to have studied at this world-class institution, fortunate to have had access to all the life-changing opportunities we've had access to, from dollar milkshakes on Wednesdays to internships and everything in between, and fortunate to have been in community with one another during a time when community has proven to be so very essential, yet tragically so elusive. I know these are blessings and privileges that are so rarely afforded to so many, because I come from a world and a community that is so far removed from the campus that we've lived on for the last 4 years. And it is through my upbringing that I derived an intimate appreciation of that ancient adage, to whom much is given, much is required. I was born and raised in the city of San Bernardino, a city entrapped in an economic crisis, with a poverty so severe that hope for tomorrow was often strangled during the day-to-day struggle to survive. And it was in these conditions that led to the disintegration of my family and that sent me into the foster care system. During my 10 years in foster care, I bore witness to how this system, ostensibly in place to serve the children in its care, led to the destruction of the hopes and the dreams of so many bright-eyed and ambitious children. And sadly, I could have been one of those kids. But time and time and time again, fortune interceded on my behalf. And had it not been for me enlisting in the United States Navy, I am confident when I say that I would have likely fulfilled the statistical destiny that so often awaits former foster children: incarceration, addiction, poverty, and so on. And so, having been so fortunate to have escaped the circumstances of my youth, I am obligated to dedicate my life to ensuring that no family suffers the same fate as mine, and that no child has their futures dictated to them by luck and luck alone. And within this story of mine contains the message that I hope to impart today. To quote and slightly edit one of the greatest moral philosophers of the 20th century, Uncle Ben from The Amazing Spider-Man. I believe that with great fortune comes great responsibility. As proud as we deserve to feel today, we must acknowledge that the transformative education that we just received foists upon us a duty. As I said at the outset, we are accustomed to scaling mountains, but this education calls for us to move them now. And this ain't just coming from me. Each of you, by attending this university, implicitly accepted that responsibility. I know we're all too familiar with UChicago's infamous unofficial motto, UChicago, where fun comes to die. But as Daphne alluded to, we also have an official motto, if you didn't know. Let knowledge grow from more to more, and so be human life enriched. I love this motto, primarily the second part of it, because I don't think it's meant to serve as a simple slogan. I think it's meant to serve as a challenge, because human life doesn't become enriched automatically. We, as students and soon as graduates of this institution, are called to be agents of that enrichment. And we don't do that simply by pursuing our own narrow self-interest. We do that by serving others. And let me be abundantly clear. Service, in my mind, is not restricted to any one career or calling, so there is no abdicating this duty of ours. Whether you're going into finance or the fine arts, to consulting or to Capitol Hill, you will be in a position to serve others, and you must ensure that the work that you do leads to the enrichment of human life. And for me, that is precisely what service is about. It's far grander than any one pursuit or any one vocation. It is an action that is inextricably bound up in the human condition. It is an awareness that all of us, as global citizens, are in some way reliant on and thus responsible for one another. And this is particularly true for folks like us, the graduating class of 2023, those who have been endowed with such great privileges. And so it is not only our sacred responsibility, but our duty to deploy our education to better the world around us, to uplift and inspire the people in our lives, to engage constructively with the grand challenges of the day, and most importantly, to serve as engines of human enrichment. I know this might sound a little daunting to y'all, considering the fact that we haven't even graduated yet, but I want to leave you with a quote that serves as a source of inspiration for me, and I hope serves as one for you as well. It's a quote by Confucius, and it goes as follows: "The man who moves mountains starts first by carrying away small stones." If you hadn't got the memo yet, UChicago graduates were called to be mountain movers. But if each of us embraces our responsibility, if we each engage in the collective effort of moving those small stones to sustained acts of service, then the task of moving that mountain becomes infinitely easier. And don't get me wrong, given the state of the world as it is today, this will be a monumental challenge. But if there's one thing I know about UChicago students, is that not only do we relish a challenge, but we rise to one as well. And so let us go out there, let us be good stewards of the education that we just received, an education that billions of people across this planet are in desperate need of, and let us go move these mountains together. Thank you so much. Congratulations again, class of 2023, and please join me in welcoming our next act to the stage, one of Chicago's own, Tate Robinson.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tate Robinson. I'm going to be performing for you guys today. I'd say the two most influential events in my life thus far have probably been when I was a kid, and my dad showed me his iPod and all the music that he loved. And when my mom signed me up for piano lessons, you know, she used to sing to me every night, and there was this song that she would sing called The Spirit of the School. And it was actually a song that she wrote for her own graduation from high school in Northwoods High in South Africa back in 1990. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to sing in front of you all, and I wanted to play a rewritten version of that song as a thank you. So here goes. Thank you, guys. We came to this school as children. We were unsure and afraid, wondering how we'd find our place in amongst the sea of faces. But when we walked through the door, it almost seemed as though the very walls were listening. They'd heard it all and whispered what they knew. child, we've been waiting for you. Come, child, know that we adore you. Teach you how to work, show you how to play, help you to learn in so many ways. And as the years went by, we try to find our place. Somewhere dreams we left behind, for others that we turn to chase. And as we walk through the halls, it almost seemed like lonely crowded rooms. Walls they knew called us on and whispered what they knew. Singing, come child, the best is yet to come. Come child, and don't forget that you know you're not alone. We'll help you find your home, and so it goes. Come child, we've got much more to teach you. Come child, we know a world that needs you all to carry on. We'll help you to be strong. Oh, oh, oh. As we turn away and walk through the door, and as we learn to grieve, these very walls, I hear the whisper still, but different than before. Singing, go child, the world is waiting for you. Go child, so much left in store. We taught you what we showed you what we should, the rest is up to you. And so we'll go and move on and find our place in life. Go on and keep up the fight, and the school will live in us. Try to carry on. Oh, ooh, 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 ooh. Thank you.
Yeah, let's give it up one more time for Tate Robinson. My name is Gregory Asare, and I'm a member of the class of 2023, graduating tomorrow with a bachelor's in biology. Thank you. I also competed as a member of the varsity football team during my time at UChicago, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our next guest at Class Day, our awardees in athletics. The athletics program at the University of Chicago sponsors 20 intercollegiate sports with more than 500 participants and 330 contests taking place each year. Our Maroon athletes excel both in the classroom and in competition, consistently earning a plethora of honors every year. Throughout the university's history, its student athletes and teams have demonstrated that academic and athletic excellence can complement each other. Here today to recognize two outstanding student athletes is Angie Torain, one of my favorite personal mentors, and the Director of Athletics and Recreation. So please join me in welcoming Angie to the stage now.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. What a pleasure to be here to celebrate the class of 2023, as well as our special athletes. So there's two awards that we give to our highest achieving seniors. And the first one that I'll talk about is the Stagg Medal Award. So the Amos Alonzo Stagg Medal is named after legendary UChicago former football coach Amos Alonzo Stagg and has been presented annually since 1947 to the senior male athlete with the best all-around record for athletics, scholarship, and character. This year's Amos Alonzo Stagg Medal winner was Richard Gillespie, or is Richard Gillespie. Each year that he has competed at UChicago, he has added more academic and athletic accolades and helped to build a strong culture for the UChicago men's soccer program. Richard anchored the UChicago men's soccer defense from his center back position. During 4 years on the squad, the Maroons were annually the best defensive team in the nation. He also led UChicago to the NCAA Division III championship tournament 3 times. The Maroons made history by winning the 2022 NCAA National Championship with a season record of 22-0-1. Give it up. Richard started his career strong by receiving the UAA Conference Rookie of the Year award in 2019. He was also recognized for his academic excellence from multiple organizations. He was a 3-time UAA All-Academic recipient, and the College Sports Communications selected him as the first-team Academic All-American in 2022. Richard is described by his coach as a person who leads by example and who has been an integral part in the development of the men's soccer program and the overall success of the men's soccer team. He is dedicated to his teammates' fitness, mental, and physical preparation for games and practice. Please help me congratulate Richard Gillespie as the Stagg Medal winner. Our next award is the Dudley Medal Award. I'm honored to announce the winner of the Gertrude Dudley Medal. This medal is named in honor of former UChicago Director of Physical Culture, Gertrude Dudley. This medal has been presented annually since 1977 and goes to the outstanding senior athlete for leadership and skills in women's athletics. This year's winner is Grace Hynes. Grace was an immediate impact player for the UChicago women's basketball team upon her arrival in Hyde Park. The Chicago native was a starter at shooting guard in her first year. Grace led the Maroons to the 3rd round of the NCAA tournament, the team's first appearance in the Sweet 16 since 2012. One more round. Even more impressive, Grace became the 17th player in the UChicago program history to reach 1,000, I did say 1,000, career points. On the academic side, Grace was a 3-time UAA All-Academic honoree. Grace brings everything that she has and everything that she does. I kid Grace and told her that at our basketball games, when we were down, it was like she would put a superhero cape on, and then the game would just change and we would win. So she truly made an impact on our women's basketball program this year. Grace is described by her coach as a leader on and off the court. Her teammates love her for her humility, sense of humor, and competitive fire. Please help me congratulate Grace Hynes. And again, congratulations to all the seniors. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Estrella Hernandez, and I am a member of the class of 2023, graduating tomorrow with a double major in law, letters, and society, and global studies. Today, I am so excited to introduce our next speaker, Dean John W. Boyer. For the past 30 years, John W. Boyer has been the University of Chicago's Dean of the College and Professor in the European Civilization sequence. During his tenure, Dean Boyer has been committed to broadening opportunities for learning, both inside and outside of the classroom. He is devoted to constantly improving our core curriculum, and when he's not teaching, he's helping others learn more about the Hyde Park community we call home on his famous bike tours. Dean Boyer shows his love for learning as a historian as well. Having received his PhD from the University of Chicago, Dean Boyer specializes in the history of the Habsburg Empire. And in addition, his love for the University of Chicago is also apparent. In 2015, he published a 700-page volume of the university's history called The University of Chicago, A History. This class day is also a special one as we commemorate the end of Dean Boyer's historic tenure as Dean of the college. Although his time on campus is not ending, he has served as an institutional pillar for generations of students. Please join me in welcoming Dean John W. Boyer to the stage and thanking him for all of his years of service as he presents the John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Awards for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
Thank you very much for those kind words. So we're now going to present the Quantrell Awards, our teaching awards to outstanding faculty. 86 years ago, the first teaching awards in the history of the University of Chicago were presented. In May 1937, Ernest Quantrell, who was a member of our Board of Trustees since 1929, wrote to President Robert Maynard Hutchins offering an endowed fund of $75,000 to provide for several teaching awards. For Quantrell, quote, "The purpose of the award is to interest teachers in training not only scholars and research workers, but also young women and men for intelligent and public-spirited participation and leadership in business, civic, and professional life. And I hope the award will result in constantly improving our faculty who teach undergraduates," unquote. The awards were to be based on nominations by our students of faculty members who had done a particularly effective and inspiring job in collegiate education in Chicago. Ernest Quantrell was an alumnus of the university, having entered the college as a freshman in 1901, where he encountered, as he later put it, quote, "one of the greatest faculties in the history of American higher education," unquote. While at Chicago, Quantrell was the president of the Reynolds Club, a member of the Owl and Serpent, a letter holder on the track team, and the treasurer of his class. He left the university in 1905 and gained employment in the bond department of a Chicago savings bank. This proved to be a fruitful and prosperous career for him and led to his founding of his own investment company in New York City in 1928. From 1938 to 1952, the awards were given anonymously, but in the latter year, Ernest Quantrell agreed to the public disclosure of his name as the patron of these awards. And although Quantrell created the teaching awards, they bear the name of his father and mother. Hence, since 1954, their official title has been the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Awards for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching. Until his death in 1962 at the age of 81, Ernest Quantrell followed the university's Quantrell Awards ceremony at the annual convocation assembly with great pride and delight. And the ability of the university and the ability of our students who nominated our faculty with recurring and reassuring regularity to be able to generate still more truly worthy candidates for its prizes pleased him greatly. We know now as the history of the Hutchins era at the University of Chicago, that's the era from 1929 to 1951, is unfolded, and as historians have had a chance to scrutinize the real record, apart from the myths associated with President Hutchins, how important these prizes were for Chicago. For Ernest Quantrell was one of those alumni, and there were many in the 1930s who was at first very skeptical of some of Robert Hutchins' educational innovations that seemed to posit academic learning as the exclusive and indeed the only goal of the college, to the detriment of other skills and experiences that would also be valuable to young women and men in the course of their adult lives. In contrast, Quantrell believed that the university needed to train not only brilliant scholars, but also effective civic and professional leaders and committed and enlightened citizens. But Quantrell was also an alumni leader who was enlightened enough to take a chance on new ideas and who understood that universities must be dynamic instruments of change. He believed strongly that it was possible for the University of Chicago to be both intensely academic and supportive of the lives of our students in and beyond the classroom, and that it should be profoundly devoted to changing and improving the conditions of our nation. Hence the hybridic quality of the commendation that I just read from Quantrell to Hutchins. He wanted to honor scholars who were great teachers and who produced skilled students, but he also wanted to honor teachers who in their persons would offer, to use a rather old-fashioned word, noble ideals and noble role models who would inspire our students to be more enlightened and more effective leaders of their communities and of our nation. And indeed, the distinctive intellectual strength of our students, but also their strong and always impressive professional success over the last half-century, are perhaps the best and most satisfying signs that both of Ernest Quantrell's hopes have been very much fulfilled. Since 1938, more than 300 faculty members have received Quantrell Awards, and the awards have become, and they continue to be, one of the highest honors that the University of Chicago can bestow on a member of our faculty, not only for their excellence in research, but also for the distinguished role they play in our curriculum. As one of my distinguished predecessors, Dean Alan Simpson, aptly said of our prizes, during a chapter on the history of undergraduate education in the United States, which has been disfigured by the flight from teaching of the research professor, the resource professor, and the roving professor, the Quantrell Awards have recalled to us a better sense of proportion by combining the soft reproach with a solid reward. Others have reminded us that a profession that surrenders its chance to fire impressionable minds is courting its own sterility, but few have discovered such a tangible and positive way of making that point. On behalf of the University of Chicago, I'm now pleased to present the winners of the 2023 Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Awards for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
Adrian John, Alan Grant McClear Professor, Department of History and the College, and Chair, Department of History, will present the first Quantrell Award.
Leora Auslander is a renowned teacher of cultural history, Jewish history, and the histories of race and gender in the modern world. Always attentive to the meanings that lie hidden in the everyday objects and practices that surround us, she inspires students to see subtleties that might otherwise be missed, to notice connections that might otherwise never come to light. In courses both here on the university's central campus and in its centers overseas, she teaches students how to appreciate the diversity of historical influences that have shaped both our own culture and those of others, at every level from the politics of the modern state to the conduct of domestic life. Students leave her classes excited to emulate in their future lives the curiosity, intelligence, insight, and generosity of spirit that she herself demonstrates so consistently. Dean Boyer, I have the honor to present Leora Auslander for the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
Leora Auslander teaches our students to see the importance of history for modern life, and she encourages them to use historical perspectives to pose and tackle many of the key questions of contemporary culture. She inspires them to be curious, critical, and humane citizens in their own right. Leora, it's on behalf of the University of Chicago, I now confer upon you the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
The next recipient of the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching is unable to be here due to extenuating circumstances. I have the honor of presenting the recipient in absentia. Michael Gladders has shown exceptional dedication to training and mentoring undergraduates in the recently initiated undergraduate major in astrophysics. He created and leads the 2-quarter field course in astronomy and astrophysics, a hugely popular hands-on course that engages students in cutting-edge research by preparing them to take data at a telescope, collect and analyze those data, and collaborate to produce publication-quality papers. In the process, they learn invaluable lessons in how to work in a collaborative research team. Many of the students have formed with him a research collaboration that has published 4 papers and counting. His commitment to creating an open and welcoming environment in the classroom is reflected in the enthusiastic comments of his students. One wrote, "The care of his students as well as his course shines through in every class and interaction." Dean Boyer, I have the honor to present Michael Gladders for the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Awards for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
Michael Gladders is honored by his students and his colleagues for his excellence in teaching, research, and mentorship, and team building in his unique field course in astronomy and astrophysics. On behalf of the University of Chicago, I now confer upon Michael Gladders in absentia the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
Lawrence Puskowski, Addie Clark Harding Professor, Department of Music in the college, Chair, Department of Music, will present the next Quantrell Award.
Robert Kendrick is a scholar of early modern music and culture whose interests extend to historical anthropology, traditional Mediterranean polyphony, musical laments, and the music of Latin America. His capacious knowledge of musical practices and their cultural contexts, along with his deep understanding of musical structure, opens his students to the broad sweep of musical expression within religious, artistic, and popular contexts. He's a passionate advocate for historically informed performance, having worked closely with many early music performers. And within his classrooms, even the most historically or culturally distant musics come alive. His deep attachment to music and all it might convey, coupled with his unparalleled erudition, connects his students to truly exceptional worlds and ways of knowing. Dean Boyer, I have the honor to present Robert Kendrick for the Llewellyn, John, and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
Through his dedicated teaching and passion for scholarship, Robert Kendrick has opened his students' eyes and ears to music in all of its various forms and guided them to a deeper understanding of the place of music in history and culture. Robert Kendrick, on behalf of the University of Chicago, I now confer upon you the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
The next recipient of the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching is unable to be here due to extenuating circumstances. I have the honor of presenting the recipient in absentia. Phoebe Rice is a renowned biochemist who studies mechanisms of gene transfer in microscopic organisms using the tools of structural biology. She is dedicated, encouraging, and enthusiastic about her field and her course, Topics in Biological Chemistry, and is a committed mentor of undergraduate and graduate students. Her highly engaging teaching style includes questions for students to ponder, which leads both to fascinating in-class conversations and a deeper understanding of the material. She makes a clear effort to explain biochemical processes by creating a storyline with the protein and other molecules as characters in her class on molecular mechanics. Her comical analogies, such as the DNA mugshots, are truly unforgettable. A student wrote, "She encouraged scholarly thinking and has significantly contributed to my progress as a student and future scientist." Dean Boyer, I have the honor to present Phoebe Rice for the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
A talented and accomplished biochemist, educator, and mentor, Phoebe Rice motivates and supports her students' progress in learning, and with her enthusiasm, focus on underlying principles and deep understanding and stimulation of student engagement. She sets a standard for the scientist educator. And on behalf of the University of Chicago, I now confer upon Phoebe Rice, in absentia, the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
The next recipient of the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching is unable to be here due to extenuating circumstances. I have the honor of presenting the recipient in absentia. James T. Sparrow is an expert on U.S. democracy and society in the 20th and 21st centuries. In his teaching at the University of Chicago, he encourages students to see contemporary issues as profoundly historical in nature, using original sources and compelling interpretations to investigate problems that emerged through the American century and continue to challenge our society to this day. His courses on the New Deal, the Cold War, and the rise of social science had led students to new understandings of how democratic systems develop in intricate connection with the intellectual disciplines that explain and shape them. He also has been one of the university's pioneers in the use of digital techniques to further such understanding. He personifies the university's commitment to the importance of social science for addressing society's biggest questions old and new. Dean Boyer, I have the honor to present James T. Sparrow for the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching.
James T. Sparrow is a brilliant, dedicated, and inclusive teacher and mentor. Students in his classes learn how to think historically about the most pressing problems of our time. I'm therefore honored to present James Sparrow the Llewellyn John and Harriet Manchester Quantrell Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching. It is now my honor to introduce to the college a new award for extraordinary undergraduate achievement as well as its inaugural recipient. The Hugo F. Sonnenschein Medal for Excellence is the highest honor bestowed upon undergraduates in the college. It is named in memory of the university's 11th president, a transformational leader who championed the college and who cared deeply about the university's unique ability to serve the world. With this award, we celebrate Hugo Sonnenschein's legacy of courageous leadership and recognize one graduating student whose character and actions embody the college's foundational commitment to the direct and active betterment of society. This award's first recipient is Ricky Holder, a U.S. Navy veteran and former foster youth who organized a homeless students summit that spurred solutions to a housing crisis at community colleges. This summit compelled the California legislature to act ultimately by amending a law that restricts financial assistance to college-bound foster youth. In all of his advocacy, Ricky has had the resolute purpose of serving society's most vulnerable populations. Ricky received the prestigious Marshall Scholarship, which recognizes academic excellence, leadership, and ambassadorial potential. And he will pursue next year an MPhil in comparative social policy at the University of Oxford. Ricky, on behalf of the college, I'm delighted and very honored to bestow upon you the inaugural Hugo F. Sonnenschein Medal for Excellence in recognition of your ambition for others, your leadership, and your public service.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bridget from the class of 2023. After serving as a 2-year member of the Maroon Keys Society, I'll be graduating tomorrow with majors in economics, law, letters and society, and art history. Looking back on my time here, I find my UChicago experience inseparable from the organizations that I had the opportunity to partake in. From engaging in Wednesday pitches with the Blue Chips, working on late-night projects with Campus Catalyst and Ecker Consulting, to building a lifelong community in the Delta Sigma Pi Business Fraternity and the Oak Society. It is therefore my honor to introduce this year's recipients of the Howell Murray Alumni Association Awards. As one of the most prestigious undergraduate awards given by the university, this award recognizes the outstanding and unique contributions of graduating seniors in co-curricular activities on campus. The students from the class of 2023 selected for this honor have actively helped better our UChicago community through their continued transformative efforts to promote and improve a wide range of different campus groups and organizations. Throughout the past 4 years, these seniors have demonstrated exceptional leadership, creativity, and teamwork. This year's awards will be presented by Lauren Henry, Executive Director of Alumni Engagement and Annual Giving. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Henry, a fellow UChicago alumna, to the stage now.
Thank you so much, Bridget. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you to celebrate the college class of 2023. I want to start by congratulating the class of 2023. You are now very nearly alumni, and I am so excited to welcome you to our global alumni community. As you join the community, I hope you'll stay engaged in new ways, whether it's attending your first reunion, save the date, May 17th, 2024, whether it's participating in regional affinity or industry-focused programming, or any of the myriad other ways that you can continue to stay connected to the UChicago community after your graduation. As Bridget mentioned, the Howell Murray Award is one of the college's highest honors. I had the absolute privilege of learning more about these incredible students and their work at the Student Leadership Awards earlier this quarter, and it is my honor to be here to celebrate them again here today. I'm going to go through their names, and if our honorees are here with us on stage, I'll ask that they please come forward to receive their medal. Gregory Asare. Naya Duvall. Lola Fisher. Felix Gonzalez. Megan Hendricks. Haley Mirabelle. Neville Nazareth. Tyler Okeke. Sua O. Rose Pickman. Marseille Sanchez. Caleb Smith. Jillian Turenin. Leah Ulrich. Caroline Weber. And finally, Jokabad Yuboa. And with that, I will say congratulations again to our amazing Howell Murray honorees and to the class of 2023.
Good afternoon, friends, families, and graduating seniors. Thank you for being here today to celebrate the achievements of the class of 2023. My name is Olivia Gross, and I'm a third year in the college studying fundamentals, issues, and texts. My area of concentration within this major is guided by a single question: how do we agreeably disagree? Today, I have been given the honor to introduce the Class Day keynote speaker, Mr. Bret Stephens. Bret Stephens is an opinion columnist for the New York Times and the founding editor-in-chief of Sapir, a quarterly journal with the mission of offering new ideas for a thriving Jewish future. Previously, he worked as a foreign affairs columnist for the Wall Street Journal and was also the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, a position he assumed at the age of 28. Bret is the recipient of numerous awards and distinctions, including the 2013 Pulitzer Prize for Commentary, the 2014 Distinguished Alumnus Award from the University of Chicago, the 2019 Ellis Island Medal of Honor, and he has also received 3 honorary doctorates. Additionally, with Gary Kasparov, Bret is a founder of the Renew Democracy Initiative, an organization dedicated to strengthening the principles of liberal democracy at home and abroad. In 2022, the government of Russia banned him for life from visiting the country. Bret was raised in Mexico City. He graduated with honors from the University of Chicago and completed his bachelor's degree in fundamentals, issues, and texts. The question that guided his learning was, can democracy survive technology? Today, Bret remains connected to the University of Chicago as a member of the advisory board for the Institute of Politics. Last summer, I had the pleasure for working for Bret and came away from the experience with 2 important ideas about the nature of agreeable disagreement. Firstly, Bret showed me the value in being exposed to and confronted with opposing views. Even when you think you disagree with someone or something, If you take the time to thoughtfully listen and engage, new thoughts might just emerge. Secondly, I learned that you can come to grow deeply fond of the people you don't always agree with, as I am with Bret. He's not only shown me the value of autonomous thinking, but the stakes that accompany it. He's a patient teacher, an inspiring mentor, and a loyal friend. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker to the stage, Mr. Bret Stephens.
This is a speech about speaking your mind when other people don't want you to. To those of you who are protesting or planning a walkout, I thank you for not seriously disrupting my speech. And though I'm sorry that you won't hear me out, I completely respect your right to protest any speaker you dislike, including me, so long as you honor the Chicago principles. It is one of the core liberties that all of us have a responsibility to uphold, protect, and honor. To those of you who choose to stay, I thank you for honoring another Chicago principle, one that was dear to my dear friend, Bob Zimmer, namely, that a serious education is impossible except in an environment of unfettered intellectual challenge, an environment that, in turn, isn't possible without the opportunity to encounter people and entertain views with whom and with which you might profoundly disagree. To John Boyer, who welcomed me to Chicago in 1991 when I was a nervous 17-year-old freshman, I want to salute you for everything you've done to make the college so much better while preserving what always made it great. The conviction that to think clearly, we must be able to speak freely. That to disagree intelligently, we must first understand the views of our opponents profoundly. That to change people's minds, we must be open to the possibility that our minds might be changed. All of this asks us to listen charitably, argue candidly, consider deeply, examine and re-examine everything, above all, our own deeply held convictions. And, unlike at so many other universities, to respond to ideas we reject with more and better speech, not heckling or censorship. To the class of 2023, you and your families should all be exceptionally proud of the diplomas you will soon hold in your hands. I know how hard you've worked to get them, and I know that the education you got here is qualitatively different from the education you would have received nearly anywhere else, not just better, but also dedicated to something higher and more important than the mere acquisition of complex knowledge and specialized skills. What I am referring to is the capacity, the desire, and above all, the courage to think for yourselves and to express and behave yourselves accordingly. This is more than just the purpose of an education. It is what the world you are entering most desperately needs from you. And it is what I trust and hope you are uniquely equipped to offer. Decades ago, the art critic Harold Rosenberg coined the phrase, "the herd of independent minds." It is a line I think about often. The herd of independent minds are the people who say they make up their own minds when it comes to politics, and yet somehow, generally, and without exception, arrive at precisely the same long list of political conclusions as millions of others. The herd of independent minds were the Republicans who were ardent never-Trumpers in 2015, fervent Trumpers from 2017 to 2021, never-Trumpers again after January 6th, and are now tilting back toward Trump. In other words, Lindsey Graham. The herd of independent minds are those who think La La Land is a great movie, but Miss Congeniality isn't. The point is, there are very few people who don't see themselves as independent thinkers. There are even fewer people who are. This is true wherever you go, in most walks of life. But it seems to be especially true in places and institutions heavily populated by people with elite educations, the kinds of places and institutions that many of you will soon be a part of. Groupthink is the affliction of those who ought to be, and often think of themselves as, the least vulnerable to it. Consider some examples. Why did nobody at Facebook, sorry, Meta, stop Mark Zuckerberg from going all in on the metaverse, possibly the worst business idea since New Coke? Why were the economists and governors at the Federal Reserve so confident that interest rates could remain at rock bottom for years without running a serious risk of inflation? Why did the CIA believe that the government of Afghanistan could hold out against the Taliban for months, but that the government of Ukraine would fold to the Russian army in days? Why were so few people on Wall Street betting against the housing market in 2007? Why were so many officials and highly qualified analysts so adamant that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction? Why were so many people convinced that overpopulation was going to lead to catastrophic food shortages and that the only sensible answers were a one-child policy and forced sterilizations? Oh, and why did so many major polling firms fail to predict Donald Trump's victory in 2016? The cases are almost endless, the consequences frequently disastrous. And it raises the question, why is it that when you bring together a lot of smart people in a room, their collective intelligence tends to go down, not up? Why do they always seem to press the mute button on their critical faculties when confronted with propositions that, as an old colleague of mine liked to say, ought to vanish in the presence of thought? I'm not sure there's one right answer, but here are a few thoughts based on my own observations and experiences. First, the problem isn't that people aren't smart. It's that they are scared. To yell stop when everyone else says go, or go when everyone else says stop, takes guts, and guts aren't part of any kind of normal college curriculum. In my generation, the hardest people to say no to were the people who had professional power over us. In your generation, I think, it's the people who are in your own ideological tribe. Whatever it is, how many of us, if we're honest with ourselves, really have that kind of courage? Second, there is the problem of rationalization, of smart people convincing themselves and others of some truly dumb things. Robert McNamara, one of the original whiz kids and probably one of the brighter bulbs in 20th century American public life, was one of the fathers of the Vietnam War at the Pentagon and of the Third World Debt Crisis when he was at the World Bank. Somehow, he always managed to convince the other smart people in the room that he was right. Will you be able to notice the underlying flaw in an idea when the arguments for it sound so persuasive? Third, there is a psychological dimension. Some people are inveterate truth seekers. They are almost congenitally willing to risk rejection, ostracism, even hatred for the sake of being right. But most people just want to belong, and the most essential elements of belonging are agreeing and conforming. Would-be belongers engage in what is known as preference falsification, pretending to enjoy things they don't or subscribe to ideas they secretly reject. They go along to get along because the usual emotional companion to intellectual independence isn't pride or self-confidence. It's loneliness and sometimes crippling self-doubt. Is that a price you are willing to pay? All these factors are, to a large extent, the product of human nature, of our deeply ingrained instinct to join and stick with the pack no matter where it leads. But there's a fourth factor, maybe the most crucial. It's culture. Does the culture of a society or of an institution encourage us to stand out or to fit in, to speak up or to bury our doubts? Does it serve as a conduit to groupthink or as an obstacle to it? I mentioned a moment ago that all of us like to think of ourselves as independent thinkers, even if comparatively few of us really are. There's an institutional corollary. Nearly every American institution, outside of certain religious orders, claims to encourage open debate and, that awful cliche, thinking outside the box. Apple's famous slogan, "Think Different," was one of the most successful ad campaigns of my lifetime. But, at least in my experience, very few institutions truly welcome it, at least when it exposes them to any sort of pressure or criticism, much less loss of social capital or potential revenue. Take Fox News. The network likes to think of itself as the scourge of cancel culture, at least when the people doing the canceling are on the left. But when its own election desk called the state of Arizona for Joe Biden on election night in 2020, the network quickly fired its chief polling analyst, Chris Starwalt, claiming, in the disingenuous words of Rupert Murdoch, that he was, quote, overly casual in discussing election results. Or take MIT. After it canceled a lecture on the potential for life on exoplanets by Chicago's Dorian Abbott, not on account of Professor Abbott's scientific credentials or the substance of his talk, but because his political views had incited protest, the departmental dean at MIT said, quote, "Besides freedom of speech, we have the freedom to pick the speaker who best fits our needs," end of quote. Each of these examples, and we can all think of scores of others, is an unwitting reformulation of the classic line widely attributed to Groucho Marx. "These are my principles. If you don't like them, I have others." Institutions and their leaders invariably say they support independent thinking and free speech, but usually when that support is easy and costs them nothing, not when it's hard and requires them to take a stand. They want provocative thinking, provided it isn't too pointed and offends only the people who don't count in their social network. They want to foster a culture of argument and intellectual challenge, so long as nobody ever says the wrong thing and feelings don't get hurt. In short, they want to reap the benefits of free expression without accepting its costs, also known as eating your cake and having it too. But this doesn't always have to be the case. Institutions can, in fact, practice what they preach. They can announce principles, set a tone, announce norms and expectations, and then live up to their principles through regular practice. They can explain to every incoming class of students or new employees that they champion independent thinking and free expression in both word and deed. They can prove that they won't cave to outrage mobs and other forms of public pressure, either by canceling invited speakers or by never inviting controversial speakers in the first place. There is a way this is done. It's called leadership. You have one magnificent example of it on this stage in the person of John Boyer. And you have had a historic example of it in the person of Bob Zimmer. I want to say a few words about him. In its obituary for President Zimmer, the New York Times mentioned that in his career as a distinguished mathematician, his main interest lay in ergodic theory and something called Lie groups. I don't know what those are either. But I think it's notable that a man whose scholarly career was probably the most insulated from any kind of political pressure so profoundly and intuitively understood the importance of protecting intellectual freedom throughout the whole academy. To adapt Martin Luther King Jr.'s line about injustice, Bob knew that a threat to independent thinking anywhere was a threat to independent thinking everywhere, including in abstruse mathematics and the hard sciences. The stands he took when it came to hot-button questions about safe spaces, trigger warnings, and controversial speakers ultimately had little to do with relatively lowly questions about university politics. They were about defending the life of the mind at its highest and furthest reaches. Bob understood something else, that one man with courage makes a majority. He showed other university presidents how it's done, what it means to take a stand, how to effectively communicate your beliefs, and when to put your foot down. In contrast to how MIT handled Professor Abbott's opinions, he responded to a Chicago campus campaign to have Abbott sanctioned with a reminder that, quote, the university does not limit the comments of faculty members, mandate apologies, or impose other disciplinary consequences for such comments unless there has been a violation of university policy or the law. People often note that the Chicago principles have been adopted by scores of universities, and that's great. But where Bob's real legacy lies is in the academic leaders who are finally finding their nerve to stand up to the enemies of intellectual freedom. And in doing so, he showed that a university president who was morally courageous and intellectually cogent would also attract the best students, inspirit the best faculty, and regain the loyalty of doubting alumni, because leaders with courage are leaders with followers. In short, Bob created an institutional culture that, as Salman Rushdie once said, serves as a safe space for thought, not a safe space from thought. And my question to you, both in the audience and on this stage, is whether you will take inspiration from it in your own lives and careers. I hope you do so, whether you choose to lead a private or a public life. And I hope you do so by writing your own version of The Joy of Argument, which is like a similarly titled book from 50 years ago, updated for an era that has become curiously and depressingly afraid of both. The Joy of Argument is not about owning or destroying or otherwise trying to disparage, caricature, or humiliate your opponent. On the contrary, it should be about opposition and mutuality, friction and delight, the loosening of inhibitions and the heightening of concentration, playfulness and seriousness, and sometimes even a truly generative act. Yes, I am comparing great arguments to great sex. But the analogy bears a brief follow-through because, in the last analysis, the only way in which we are going to create institutions in which independent thought and free expression flourish isn't through a declaration of principles, however well constructed it may be. At best, those principles can only lay the ground for what we are trying to achieve. Nor can it be on account of some worthy but abstract goal, like the health of democracy, which, again, is wonderful, but rarely motivates people to action. We are going to succeed at the task only when we persuade others and ourselves that these things you've all been doing at the University of Chicago for the past few years, discussing and debating and interrogating and doubting and laughing and thinking harder and better than you ever did before, aren't the antithesis of fun. They are the essence of it. They make up the uniquely joyful experience of being authentically and expressively and unashamedly yourself, and at the same time, having a form of honest and intimate contact with others who, in their own ways, are being authentically and expressively and unashamedly themselves. Enough with the sex analogy. You are about to go out into the real world as real adults with a real hand in shaping the conditions of our common life. Many of you will soon join and eventually lead great institutions, and a few of you will create significant businesses, NGOs, schools, and other institutions of your own. I'm guessing not many of you are thinking, I want to make them just like the University of Chicago, at least as far as sub-zero temperatures, midterms that begin the third week, and the food at Valois are concerned. But I hope you can at least say this, that at Chicago, you learned that institutions become and remain great, not because of the weight of their traditions or the perception of their prestige, but because they are places where the sharpest thinking is given the freest rein, and where strong arguments may meet stronger ones, and where error of opinion may be tolerated because reason is left free to combat it, and where joy and delight are generally found at the point of contact, mental or otherwise. If you can say this, then Chicago will have served you well. And if you can bring this mindset and this spirit to the places you will soon make your own, then you will serve Chicago even better. Go forth, good luck, and thank you.
Class of 2023, family, friends, and greater UChicago community. As our formal Class Day event comes to an end, I ask that you take the final few moments of this program to reflect on what we leave behind as undergraduates of the University of Chicago, as well as what we take with us as graduates of the college. As much as Class Day is a celebration of us, the class of 2023, I do think it's also about the community, about the family that we've chosen to invite and watch us close out a meaningful chapter of our lives, about the friends that we're sitting next to now, both the underclassmen and, friends that we're graduating with, friends that we're never going to forget once we do. It's about our faculty, professors, and research advisors who have supported our knowledge and growth. It's about our resident deans, dining hall staff, and housing staff, who welcomed us in as kind of bumbling first years and will be giving us our diplomas tomorrow. If graduation was really just about the graduate, we'd be here by ourselves, and that would really kill the fun. The University of Chicago is a village that has raised us as young adults, and we emerge from our time here in the image of the phoenix, uncharred and ready for a new day. To all the support systems in the crowd, thank you very much for being here today. To the university administration for planning this event and others, thank you for your time. Graduates and friends, thank you all for the past 4 years. With that, our formal Class Day event comes to an end, but I invite you all to continue celebrating with us tonight at 7:30 at the Museum of Science and Industry for a graduation dessert reception. As we all depart, I'd like you to enjoy more music from Tate Robinson. Thank you very much for your time.